Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Berak Hussain. I'm the International Student Counsellor at the Health and Counseling Services at Carleton University. Welcome back to the Stress Mindfulness Management Workshop series that we are putting on for this time of the year, especially for students who are dealing with a lot of stress, which is common this time of year with heading into the midterm, final part of the midterms, lots of assignments, heading into the exams, but also into the spring weather, at least hopefully here in Ottawa, because it gets one day minus 20 and then plus 15, which is what we're having today. So today's workshop, we're going to be taking a look at how to deal with burnout, as this is definitely something that is a hot topic and something that sometimes we confuse with stress. And so it's really important to understand the difference between what is burnout and what is stress, so that we can differentiate between the two and learn how to prevent burnout before it gets to the point of no return. There's always a chance of obviously coming back and reversing the effect of burnout and stress, but it's always good to look at the telltale signs to understand. And this is what we're going to take a look at today in terms of taking a look at why we need to learn about burnout, looking at the difference between stress and burnout. Then we will take a look at what is the impact of burnout in your life. And then we'll take a look at what you can do about burnout in terms of prevention as well as overcoming. So let's get started. You can share the link with your friends and family or anybody else that could benefit, your colleagues from this workshop. Go ahead. It's going to be interactive, as I'll be asking questions as well. So please do share your comments and your questions here, only related to the topic, and then we can get started. So on to the next slide here. Always when you're navigating a different program, it gets a little bit challenging and navigating several screens all at one time. All right, so let's take a look at understanding the difference of understanding why it's beneficial to learn about burnout. Well, first of all, we see that obviously there has been an increase in mental health challenges and issues over the last few years, and especially the last 2 years, given the pandemic. So it's really important to understand how burnout can affect your mental health. We see that work and academic productivity can be impacted when it comes to burnout, and it can lead to other mental health issues if we don't take care of it and being proactive ahead of time. So understanding, of course, what burnout is and how it impacts you can help with prevention, as we believe that prevention is better than the cure, right? So it's all about taking action and being with that preventative mindset. So let's take a look at what the difference is between stress and burnout, because I think a lot of people use these words interchangeably, and it becomes a little bit confusing when we're looking at, well, what is the difference um, in terms of looking at, like, what is the difference between stress and burnout, right? And there is a bit of a difference. So when we take a look at stress, it's characterized by over engagement, so worried, right? Emotions are overreactive. There's a sense of urgency and hyperactivity, loss of energy, which can lead to anxiety disorders. And the primary damage, of course, is physical. And we know that stress can prematurely kill you. And when we take a look at burnout, it's somewhat the opposite, in the sense that it's characterized by disengagement, a lack of interest in what you are doing or interacting with, right? Emotions are blunted. You don't really feel anything. It produces this helplessness and hopelessness attitudes, loss of motivation, ideals, and hope. And it leads to detachment and depression. And the primary damage is emotional, not necessarily physical. And it may make life seem not worth living, which can lead to suicidality and suicide ideation. So this is the difference between stress and burnout. If we continue on here, we take a look at understanding what stress is. And for those of you who've been following the stress management series, the first part was we took a look at understanding what stress is exactly and how the body responds to stress. So you could see here, it's that fight or flight response. And there's a release of stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, that is in the body that's released. And what happens that these hormones, they have several important physiological effects, including increasing the heart rate, which gets you to jump to do things, increasing the breathing rate, so respiration, increases the muscle tension in your body and blood pressure, which then increases the secretion of insulin to liberate energy and increasing the blood flow to the brain, the lungs, the heart, and the muscles. So when you're in that flight or that fight response, it's what happens to your body, which gets you to keep going, right? To act. And then what happens with the adrenaline and the cortisol also has the effect of decreasing the blood flow to the digestive tract and the kidneys and skin, which probably explains why most people who are stressed kind of lose their appetite. I'm one of those people, but immediately, right? Like you're not going to get hungry when you see, let's say, a car accident in front of you. Like you're racing to get out of the way or jumping or freezing, right? So you're not going to feel hunger in that moment. And so during chronic stress, the immune function actually decreases, which leaves the body more vulnerable to infections. So this is what stress is about. If we take a closer look here and understanding what um, burnout is, it's somewhat a little bit different. So burnout is a psychological term that refers to long-term exhaustion and diminished interest in work or school. The Maslach burnout inventory uses a three-dimensional description of exhaustion when it comes to, exhaustion, cynicism, and efficacy rather. So the antithesis of burnout is engagement, which is characterized by the energy, like we said earlier, involvement and efficacy. So it's the opposite of exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. Today, I'm not pronouncing words correctly. So we see here, this is one of the most well-studied measurements of burnout studies in the literature. And we see here that Maslach and her colleague Jackson first identified the construct of the burnout concept in the 1970s and developed a measure that weighs the effect of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced sense of personal accomplishment. So this indicator has become the standard tool for measuring burnout in research on the syndrome. So people who experience all three of these symptoms, they have the greatest degrees of burnout. And although emotional exhaustion is said to be that hallmark of what burnout is all about. So it's really useful to understand, again, the difference when we take a look at that. So understanding the three dimensions of exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. So if we go a little bit further in terms of how to recognize burnout, we see, how does the body first, I think I skipped, there we go. So it's about that loss of motivation, the continual lack of energy, complete boredom, lack of interest, and disengagement. So inability to concentrate, focus, and continually lower grades for students, for people who work, perhaps lower productivity in their work, and a detachment, right? So this detachment, lack of interest, and it just not really wanting to engage in terms of what needs to be done, that is also a telltale sign of the early, let's say, signs of burnout. Let's take a look at what burnout could look like for students, right? Students, on the other hand, could look like, they're constantly exhausted. There's that lack of motivation, constantly frustrated, right? That's something quite interesting here. Take a look at how the grades are constantly suffering, no matter what they're doing, right? And struggling to pay attention. So focus and concentration that is truly needed for studying, right? And you feel disengaged from friends and colleagues when it comes to the early student burnout signs. So your peers and so on and so forth, you're just not interested in engaging with the studies, let's say study groups, meetings, you're constantly meeting group meetings, right? So this is something that to be aware of in terms of the signs, so that you're not in that constant state of just going through the motions, but not really caring, right? So this is really important to be aware of so that you can be proactive rather than reactive. All right, so the next part here we're going to take a look at is how burnout can take months or even years to develop. And it's really important to be aware of that so that you can do something about it, again, in terms of that preventative manner. right? So a little bit more detail on that is taking a look at the study of 2006 at the University of Southern Maine, where they surveyed 354 students to get to the bottom of why these students were burning out. So we see here that about 5% students reported mental or physical issues. About 13% attributed their burnout to a lack of personal motivation. A quarter said that outside influences were a major cause. So, for example, family troubles, financial issues, time management struggles caused by things like part time jobs. Less than 5% reported problems with professors, interestingly enough, to be a cause. And the most prevalent cause by far was assignment overload. I see this daily with my students when they come in, especially this time of year where they're so overloaded with school stress that it's really hard for them to deal with the assignments and constantly asking for extensions and so on and so forth and academic accommodations. So we see here in this study, almost half of the students who reported feelings of burnout cited their overbearing and overtaxing course load as the main cause of the problems that they're dealing with. So figuring out what's causing you to experience feelings of burnout is absolutely crucial in order to solve the problem and prevent it from happening later on in your professional life. So this is the takeaway from this study so that we can do again that preventative part, which is so vital. If we take a look at this in terms of the impact of burnout, especially burnout phases, and this is from Scientific American Mind Burnt Out article. It takes a look at the compulsion, right, to prove oneself. So there's this huge engagement of wanting to take a look at proving oneself and making sure that they are constantly trying to prove something, not necessarily just to themselves, perhaps others as well, right? So, also looking at working harder, that's also something that is in terms of the phases of burnout, and then neglecting their needs. So, they're so overwhelmed and trying to prove themselves and working harder, they are completely neglecting their needs in order to be able to reach their full potential in a well balanced manner. So, you see here that this is something around lack of balance when it comes to this type of challenge, right? And then displacement of conflict. So constant conflict around them and not really knowing what to deal with what. And we take a look here at the revision of their values. So then they're so focused on trying to prove themselves and working harder that they stop focusing on their actual values and they start perhaps replacing them and perhaps just realizing that it's not really of their values, but because they're so focused on what they're doing, they change things around just to meet the needs of trying to prove themselves, right? Then you see the denial of emerging problems. So you see that they are so again into trying to prove themselves that they are forgetting about taking care of themselves in a healthy way, right? And just denying the problems or just ignoring the problems. And just again, when you're taking a look at this, it becomes challenging in the sense that they're denying and ignoring problems that are coming up because of because of again just being so stuck inside of the problem they don't see the new problems that are coming up. Then you see the withdrawal coming up. They become so overwhelmed, right, with what's happening with the emerging problems and the initial problem. They just don't really take the time to work on what needs to be done. And then you see the changes. Then you see the actual changes in their behavior due to the withdrawal, due to the ignoring of the problems that are happening, as well as depersonalization, which means taking a step back. They're not themselves anymore. They're constantly in that space of denial, essentially, right? So it becomes a really challenging situation when they are not taking care of themselves in that healthy way. And this is where you see those phases. trying to prove themselves. They work harder to try and prove themselves. They becoming neglecting of their own needs, right? Whether it's eating, not eating healthy, or whether it becomes uh, not exercising to get rid of the stress hormones, or it becomes sleep becomes a factor in terms of their staying up all night just trying to meet their needs. Then, all these different conflicts that come up, which then forces them to just change their values. And then you see that new problems that come up, they're ignoring, they're denying it, then becomes so much that they pull themselves back, overwhelmed. And that's when the changes in behavior occurs. Perhaps they start taking on substance abuse type of behaviors, becoming addicted to smoking or whatever else, vaping, or worse, the different um, influences out there that you can put in your body, substances that can impact you and your mind and your behavior, right? It could be aggression, the way that you're interacting with your friends and family around you, your colleagues, your peers, and that deep personalization of just not caring and just almost that out of body experience of who you are. So it's really interesting, and being aware of this ahead of time can prevent that again, right? So we take a look at the impact in terms of stress and emotions. We see that when stress reaches that all-time high, it's harder to regulate our emotions such as sadness, anger, and guilt, and which can bleed over and go over into panic attacks, perhaps, taking a look at anger outbursts, and like we said, substance abuse. So definitely things we want to be aware of ahead of time so that we are not being impacted in such a manner. So let's take a closer look at our next part here in terms of how do we prevent and overcome burnout, right? So take the warning signs that we presented here seriously. Take them seriously. Then learn how to say no, meaning putting boundaries around yourself, the way you interact with your friends and family, and whether it's people coming to you when you already have a full load of work and challenges, and just perhaps you're emotionally unavailable to provide more to other people around you, and then so people come and want to take more from you, you're just not available to do that. So learning how to say no, but saying it firmly and politely and nicely, right? Sleep. Your sanity may depend on it. There's a lack of sleep, you cannot focus. The lack of sleep, it can even gain weight, I was told by my trainers. A lack of sleep can not help you focus and concentrate, especially as a student. It's as though you are putting substances into your body that reaches your brain when there's a lack of sleep. So it's really important to understand how important it is to have that 7, 8 hours sleep. If you don't have that full sleep, especially around perhaps the weekends or when you're studying and all-nighters, to try and make up for it and create a healthy balance of sleep, right? Again, the whole idea of don't bite off more than you can chew is crucial when it comes to not taking on more, even though you really like to, perhaps go out more or do certain things for people or take an extra class or attend another program or whatever the case may be. Doing that, even though it's, let's say it's to help you, if let's say you're taking another course on self-care, perhaps, but you already have 5 courses that you need to pay attention to, perhaps self-care here would be dropping one of those courses and taking on this course as opposed to that and that, right? So learning how to set boundaries around yourself and not take on more than you can handle, and finding that off switch, whatever your switch is, learning to take a look at what is your threshold and learning to stop there, and learning how to turn it off when you need to so that you can de-escalate your stresses, you can do self-care, right? So it's really important to know when you can turn off that switch button to take care of yourself. And of course, asking for help, right? In a society where it's all about, the super moms and, oh, look at how much I can do in terms of, look at how much work I can do. And I can take on these many courses. I can do all these extracurricular activities. I can do all this and that. And I can do, it's almost glorifying how much you can do at the cost of your health. It's not glamorous at all. And so it's really important to have that balance of when there is a lot, take a step back, turn off that switch, recognize what you can take and cannot take, but also asking for help and support, which could mean coming to get help at, if you're a Carleton student, come to the Health and Counseling Services, come to Student Affairs, go to Student Experience Office, go to all the amazing workshops that the Learning Support Services has for you when it comes to academics, time management, study skills, focus, exam prep, essay writing, the list goes on and on. These services are there for students because students need them at some point in their academic studies. And those who are not students, well, reach out to your family doctor, reach out to your community services. Look at what's available in your community, your own centers, wherever you may connect as a community to get the support and help. There's also tons of online free programs as well and apps on the phone that you can take on as well to help you with doing self-care and boundaries and all of this type of thing. All right, so let's go on to the next part here when we're taking a look at some tips and strategies. So these are tried and tested in terms of when we're talking about stress management, which can help deal with the burnout, getting to that stage. So smiling, right? Smiling actually triggers, even if you don't feel it, we say fake it till you make it, right? Smiling can actually trigger the muscles in your brain to release happy hormones that are related with happiness, tricking the brain to think that you're happy even though you're not. You eventually start feeling it, right? There's also something with faith. If you're not really feeling the spirituality of something coming up, especially for our students who are heading into the holy month of Ramadan, early Ramadan Mubarak to you all. Sometimes people are stuck on, trying to reach their spirituality from whatever faith background you are in. I learned this from a scholar once who said, faith it till you make it. And I love it. It's the same concept as fake it till you make it. Try to get into doing things that you can get yourself spiritually into that Zen place, right? So this is something that really works well. Meditation, breathing techniques. These are really great strategies in terms of helping you focus and attention. It could be just a few minutes. Turn on some sounds like this, for example. Let me put that sound up here. I'll keep it on in the background. Just having some really nice sounds like this and just doing some deep breathing meditation can really help deal with the overall stress in your body. So for those of you who are watching the first stress management workshop, at the end of that stress management workshop, we did a great meditation that was just wonderful. And in the series before on the self-esteem, empowering self-esteem, believe it was in the second one where we did a wonderful meditation on body, mind, heart appreciation, which is really powerful. These are things that can really reset you. So check them out from the previous sessions. They're all on this YouTube channel as well as on the Carlton Wellness Facebook page. So a little sidetrack there to help you with dealing with this. Exercise is your number one stress reducer. What happens when you exercise is that the adrenaline and the stress hormones rather are released, are gone out of your system because endorphins are released into your system, the happy hormones, when you exercise, right? So that's something to really keep in your mind. And creating a healthy habit of 2-3 times a week, minimum 20 minutes, and increasing that to get into a habit, a routine. So it's really crucial. Once you start that, it's hard to let go of it. And once you let go of it, it's hard to get back into it. So it's really important to keep that balance in a way so that it is helping you. You have it, your habit routine, and it's something that you turn to when you are stressed. Practicing gratitude. Being grateful for what you have rather than focusing on what you don't have goes a long way in appreciation and reduces that feeling of stress. When you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, to what they have and what you don't have, that can absolutely increase your stress. So it's really, really important to work on gratefulness, right? Perhaps in the morning, doing positive affirmations of being grateful for what you have, and perhaps in the evening, the end of the day, thinking about all the positive things that you have in your life and what you're grateful for. It can really help you go to sleep in a positive way. Eating healthy, need I say more? We spoke a lot about that in our stress management workshop, but essentially making sure you have a balanced diet of the nutrients, whether it's protein, carbs, and other essentials, just having a healthy balance for yourself. Okay, make sure you're eating breakfast, lunch, as well as dinner, and having healthy snacks in between can go a long way in helping you manage the stress of life and getting to that place of burnout. So having a healthy diet can go a long way. And for students who are about to enter the month of Ramadan where you're fasting, keep an eye out for an article that I'm writing about that. And there's lots of experts out there who talk about nutrition, especially when it comes to your mental health. If you are taking medication, let's say you've got eating disorders, body image issues, when it comes to fasting, there's a lot around there. Keep your eye out for resources out there to help you with that, because it can be quite challenging for people who are dealing with those disorders when it comes to fasting. So just keep a lookout on that, and we'll talk about that definitely. So Again, healthy, balanced eating can go a long way in helping with stress and burnout and distracting yourself from stress with healthy habits. So, those of you who are interested in photography, those are interested in walking the woods and collecting whatever it is that you like, bird watching, hiking, perhaps getting together with some people, doing a book club. There's so many healthy distractions you can do, but not in a way to just distract yourself from the problems, but from stress itself in a healthy way, right? Breathing correctly. So short, gaspy breaths from up here rather than belly breathing can go a long way. What you want to do is want to get oxygen refined into your system. So breathing in deeply through your nose, holding your breath and releasing out. We do great breathing exercises again in the first stress management workshop that we did. Get into the habit of doing some deep breathing from your belly and releasing out through your mouth, exhaling that carbon dioxide and inhaling some good, fresh, clean oxygen refined through your nose. So, I mean, this is not the practical way of breathing all day long, but just stopping to do that a few times a day can help. But noticing when you're doing the short, gaspy breaths, like when you're stressed, as opposed to these types of breaths. So being aware of breathing can go a long way in postures and so on and so forth. There's a lot of research out there, articles you can check out that can help with that. Again, with the good posture, right? When you're constantly hunched over in front of a laptop or a computer, that can cause a lot of physical stress here on your neck, your shoulders, and it can cause headaches as well. There's a lot out there on that as well. So having a good posture and keeping your spine straight, doing some stretches can go a long way as well. Getting a massage, whether it's from a professional massager or a Groupon, get prescription referral from your doctor if it's covered through insurance. If not, like I said, definitely see what's out there in terms of massages. But if you look at the stress booklet that I had posted in the first stress management workshop, you'll see it on the link there. There's actually a step-by-step part of that article that looks at how to do a massage. So how someone can give you a massage and how you can give the massage to somebody else. Surround yourself with happy, motivated, empowered people. This type of energy is going to influence you and empower you and motivate you as well. Now, I know a lot of us could be surrounded by negative people, toxic people. So you want to be aware how to take in their energy, especially if they are people that you live with and you cannot really get rid of them if they're toxic, so to speak, right? So it's important to set boundaries in terms of not emotionally engaging with the toxicity of people around you. Now, if it's abusive, that's a different story and definitely a different discussion than here. Perhaps you can get help from people to help you with that situation. But for now, surrounding yourself by putting healthy boundaries in terms of toxicity of people who just are what we call energy vampires, right? Who just suck your energy, making sure you set your boundaries is not to be emotionally engaged with them that way. All right, let's get to the next part here. In terms of asking for help. So for those of you who are Carleton students, absolutely come to the Health and Counseling Services. We do have a drop-in crisis counselor. You can call and speak to somebody that same day. We also have walk-in doctors if anybody needs to be seen by a doctor, whether it's online, virtual, or in person. So just call the number there and ask to book an appointment. If you're a Carleton student, you can ask to speak with me as well as a Carleton student. Those of you who are international students and need to talk to somebody, again, you can reach out to myself through the Health and Counseling Services or through the International Student Services Office. We have had a great semester of workshops for our international students in person. We just started our in-person events. I hope to do these in person again soon for Carleton students. And what we did here is we had a how to make friends in Canada workshop, and we had great turnout of people engaging and leaving as friends. So this can really help with burnout and stress and loneliness as well. And students who need help with their academic supports at Carleton, please do check out the Center for Student Academic Support, CSASC, and you can check them out online as well. Book an appointment for study skill, time management, how to prepare for exams, how to write essays. The list goes on. Wonderful support. Always refer students over to them. This can help when you reach that point where you don't feel you can do any more schoolwork, you're just frustrated, you're overwhelmed. Before you get to that absolute burnout stage because of the stress, reach out and get support here at the university. Please, please, please. So just an acknowledgement here in terms of the content of this workshop. I'd like to acknowledge the health educator at Concordia University as a source for writing some of this information that we have here on the workshop, as well as if you want any other tools and advice how to deal with feeling burnt out, check out thriveglobal.com. This link here, I will copy and paste it here for you. Just go back. I will copy and paste it for you to access. Just give me a moment while I get that here onto the screen. I'll put that right there. There you go. So you can access this information. And also for additional supports and resources, I will also copy and paste these documents here for you that you can also access for getting more support on how to deal with burnout. All right. So last week, like I said, we took a look at how to deal with stress, understanding stress, how to manage stress, and we saw the difference now in this workshop in terms of the difference between burnout and stress. And essentially, when you're stressed, there's that over-engagement and just feeling worried and anxious and high levels of anxiety, right? Whereas when we take a look at burnout, it's the opposite with the lack of interest, lack of motivation, and stress can lead to burnout. It's really important. So it's really important to work on stress management, which can be the preventative factor of how to take care of your stress before it gets to that burnout. All right. Any questions or comments from our audience members who have watched this workshop today as part of our mindfulness stress release series? I see somebody had mentioned a comment about grief. I'm so sorry for your loss and the struggles that you have been dealing with. I really recommend to get rid of deep pain and sadness, to connect yourself with a therapist. If you're a Carleton student, absolutely reach out and connect with us. If not, DM me and I can send you some resources on how to work with somebody to help you with some deep pain and sadness. There are no other comments or questions. Thank you so much for those of you who have been watching. And stay tuned till next Thursday, where we will have our final part of the series in terms of looking at how to take care of yourself during exams. So stress management for exams that are coming up just around the corner. So any of you are interested, just pop in next week. And those who are not able to join in at 2:30 next week Eastern time, you absolutely can come back on our Carleton Wellness page or the YouTube channel, and you can watch this workshop later. So any other comments or questions? Those of you who are watching right now? All right. Thank you very much for those of you who've attended today, and we shall see you next week. Please don't hesitate to send in your questions here, or you can email me, berak.hussain@carleton.ca, or you can call the Carleton phone numbers like we had earlier for those of you who are Carleton students. Thank you very much and have a blessed week. And again, for those of you who will be starting the holy month of Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak, may all of you be showered with the blessings of this holy month, and stay tuned for an article on how to take care of your mental health during this holy month. Thank you very much and have a wonderful week. Peace be with you.